Central Regional Center for Rural Development, and we're pleased to host today's webinar on the new profiles for local food systems that have been put together by some of our presenters today, together with their colleagues. Our presenters today are Laura Brown, who's a Community Development Specialist with the Center for Community and Economic Development at the University of Wisconsin Extension, and Anna Haines, who's a professor in the College of Natural Resources at the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point, and a Land Use Community Development Specialist with the University of Wisconsin Extension. I'll turn it over to the two of you now.
Great. Thanks so much, Scott. Can you hear me?
Sure, good.
Great. Okay. Thanks, everyone, for taking time to join us for our presentation today. As Scott mentioned, we're going to be talking a little bit about the North Central Region Food Systems online portal. And thanks to those of you who have already answered our question here in the chat box. I'm just taking a look at that. That gives us some idea of who we have on the line. I'd like to take a minute before we get started and just explain a little bit about what we hope to accomplish in the next 45 minutes. And while we do that, you can continue to enter your information, your answer to this question in the chat box. Let's see. Okay. Actually, Rosa, would you mind pulling up that poll for us? I'm going to go back here, the first poll to tell us a little bit about yourself. Great. So I know those of you who are on the line, some of you are typing in the chat box. If you would just take a minute and fill this out also, let us know who you are. And while you're doing that, I'll explain where we're going here. For those of you who haven't seen this yet, I wanted to just give you a little preview so you can take a look at the website while we're talking about the online portal. Basically what this does is allows you to look for your county in the 12-state region and pull up a one-page county food systems profile in a PDF format. The profile includes data for selected metrics from various aspects of the food system. We'll talk more about the details in a few minutes, but I wanted to give you this preview so it provided a little bit of context for a discussion. So it looks like we've got state specialists on the line, a number of county educators, some non-extension folks, a nice diverse range of people. So while we hope the tool that we're describing today will be applicable to a wide array of audiences, it was really designed with extension educators in mind, with the hope that you'll be able to learn from this and adapt it as needed for your local community or a particular use in your programming. So it's good to see we have a number of extension people on the line. Thank you. So here's what we're hoping to accomplish. First, we'll give you a little bit of background about the project and how we implemented it. We'll talk a little bit about best practices when using and referencing data and making appropriate comparisons with some of the secondary data sources that we used in this data portal. We'll talk a little bit about those data sources specifically and how you can get some of the data and download it yourself. I'll then turn it over to Anna Haines, who will walk us through the portal itself and give some examples of county-based profiles. She'll talk about some of the specific indicators that you'll find on the site and review the tools available through the site, including the maps, discussion guide, and some of the resources that we've put up there. Then we'll wrap up with a short discussion of the uses for the portal and some things we've learned so far. So as we move on, feel free to add your questions into the chat box and we'll answer them as soon as we can. So as a bit of background information.
All right.
Anna, we've lost Laura.
Yeah, okay. So I think she was going to say as a bit of a background about how we got to where we are. I think it was the food systems team. And Laura, are you back on? Anyway, the food system team did a survey of colleagues throughout UW Extension, and some of the findings you can see here.
Anna, I'm back on. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, we thank you for jumping in there for me. We implemented this statewide survey early in 2011, realizing that there were a lot of people in Extension already doing food systems work, but we had really no way to connect with people across the state. So this survey was intended to find out what was already happening and what needs colleagues might have related to food systems work. We had over 280 responses. You can see that right there up at the top. One of the main areas of need that was identified through the survey was the need for specialist support in the form of fact sheets, a stronger research base around food systems, data and evaluation tools, and professional development. So that really told us that there was a need to pull some of this information together, and since then we have moved on to forming a cross-programmatic statewide community food systems team that includes cross-programmatic work groups. So by cross-programmatic, I mean across the various programs within Extension. So community development, family living, agriculture and natural resources, and youth development. And those work groups range from topics like food waste management to community gardens work. The idea of the team was to encourage new ways of thinking about food systems issues that cut across the program areas and weren't limited to a single issue. So I won't spend too much more time on this, but if you'd like more information about the team and how we emerged, you can find that on our public blog site, which is posted here. So broadly, what we heard from colleagues specifically through this survey and through ongoing discussions with the team is that we're really looking for that solid research base behind our food systems work to help guide our programming and help other colleagues in our offices better understand why we're doing this programming. Right now, that research base, particularly on the community and economic development side, is fairly thin. On the other hand, and as many of you probably know, there is a long tradition of grassroots work in food systems at the community level. So we felt it was really important that our work and this portal that you'll hear about in particular really help to reinforce the role of scholarship in food systems, and that is intellectual work that's reviewed by our peers who affirm its value, that adds to our shared learning and is valued by the audience that we've developed it for. So this slide sort of highlights where our work falls in Extension between that research and programming piece. We hoped the data portal, and we hope it continues to encourage innovative thinking around food systems that really encourages that more systems-based perspective. Many of you are probably already familiar with data sets and tools that are available in specific areas of food systems, so could be food security or agricultural production, but we couldn't find any that really approached food systems from a community-based, holistic perspective. And that was our original intent. We knew that some of the data might be used in communities to provide a baseline for community planning processes or even for evaluation. So there's other uses for the data, but what our original intention was to create that sort of broader, bigger picture thinking around what's happening in our food system. So these are some of the intended outcomes or research objectives that developed as we started to realize what the needs were. We wanted county educators and community leaders to understand local and regional food systems in a systematic way, to understand how key indicators are changing over time. And you'll see, from our data sets, we're somewhat limited in terms of what data is available to us to look at the timeline issues. And then to identify opportunities for growth or expansion in regional food systems through an industry cluster analysis. And this has turned out to look more like a geographic cluster analysis, so you can kind of see how some of the indicators look on regional maps. We'll show you those in just a few minutes. So as some of these needs were developing, the NCRCRD sent out a call for proposals for electronic-based resources related to community economic development. And this project involved a wide range of partners including myself. I didn't do a very good introduction of myself, but I'm with the Center for Community and Economic Development. So I'm a state specialist in Extension. We also had campus-based specialists like Steve Deller at the Department of Agriculture and Applied Economics, Anna Haines, who's with us on the call today from the Center for Land Use Education at Stevens Point, and a variety of other specialists who helped with the technology and the publication side. I also want to recognize that we had a number of county partners that were piloting the site and the tools and provided some feedback, as well as an advisory committee of some of the folks who are on the line today and the people that you see here on the slide who joined us for a number of conference calls to scope the project and provide feedback along the way. So thank you to all of you who contributed to this project in many different ways. So as a little bit of background, I'd like to take a minute to unpack what we mean when we're talking about using data and understanding a problem from a systems-based perspective. Food systems issues are complex, as you probably know if you're all working in food systems to some degree. They're influenced by local policy, by global policy issues. There are many actors, and sometimes the issues that we work on around food systems, even our programming in a single extension office, may seem to be contradictory. So we could probably spend our whole research careers just working on food security issues or production issues, and we've sort of established niches. But before we get so focused on these specific research questions, I put this slide up here to just encourage us to think a little bit more broadly, to imagine ourselves as kind of the journalists, to look at that bigger picture and then use the data to help us tell a story. So it's important to define the question, to go through sort of the research method here in terms of what are we hoping to do. But we hope that you'll use this data to help tell a story, to look at that bigger picture. And then, of course, we move into ways to understand the data, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. So in this respect, we're thinking about the data that comes out of this portal as the ingredients in the process of inquiry. And effectively using this data means we're really thinking through what we're hoping to do with it. Are we hoping to inform, just to present, to better understand? Usually, in extension education and most of our work, we're aiming for knowledge, and that is, something a little bit more applied that will help people in our communities make better decisions. So that's why we've focused on these tools that allow local level community educators to look for patterns, trends, comparisons, and not so much on the details. I know that since I gave you the link, what you probably did is you went to your county and looked up the data for your county, and you're looking for those numbers and see if they're accurate. That's great. That's definitely a point of inquiry. I'd say in using these tools in your community, we're really looking for, again, this bigger picture, looking for patterns, looking to affirm or challenge our current perceptions, strengths and weaknesses, that comparisons versus rankings. So to jump into a little bit about the data that we referenced for this project, we used a wide variety of data sets. Probably the most useful was the data that you'll see here, and some of you have probably used this tool. This is the USDA Food Environment Atlas. And there's a variety of different metrics available on this site. What you'll see here is access and proximity to a grocery store. You can download this data. Much of it is updated regularly, and you can see there are mapping tools available on this site as well. One of the reasons why we didn't just reference this site was because the site doesn't include the production data that we wanted to create a more holistic sort of view of the food system. So we encourage you to take a look at this, and you can download many of the indicators that are on our portal on this site as well. You can see that here. This is another metric, a pretty common metric for local food systems, which is direct farm sales, and this is mapped per capita. So I'd encourage you to go and explore that. And this is our portal site. So with that, I will turn it over to Anna.
All right, I think I'm unmuted, so I hope everyone can hear me. This is Anna. I'm at Stevens Point. I'm with the Center for Land Use Education and worked with Laura and Steve on putting this together. Uh, I am not going live with this. We couldn't quite figure out how to do this, so I'm just going to give you kind of an overview of what various pieces of this looks like. This is our Volkswagen version of this portal. We would love to have a more Cadillac version, and maybe we'll get there someday. We do intend to update the data if we can. So USDA, for example, their ag census has started to roll out data, so we're hoping to for 2010, right? 2012. I don't know. Anyway, we're going to try to roll that out. So this is what this looks like. And I'm going to just go through some various pieces of this. So the first thing I'm going to do, let's see if I can make this work, is go here to how to view a profile. So I would have pulled down a menu, and from that menu I can see what county that I'm looking for. So we can only go county by county with this, and there's a number of categories that we pulled and a number of indicators. And what you'll see here is we can see the county, so it's Dane County in Wisconsin. We can see what the state average is, and we can see what the regional average is for all of these indicators. And our region is, I believe it's the 12 county region within NCRCRD. So it's that Midwest,
12
upper
state.
Midwest area. How many?
12 states.
12 state, you said 12 county.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, 12 state. Yeah. So, and I'll get into this a little bit more, but I wanted to, and it's a little bit hard to see. Over here in processing and distribution, there is number of breweries. And for Dane County, it says there's just one. And so this is one thing about the data that we have. This data, the processing and distribution, is from County Business Patterns. And what we discovered is that we know in Dane County there are lots more breweries, at least brew pubs, but they are probably listed differently because they also serve food. So we know there's for sure probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 places that brew their own beer. It's just that they're not listed here as a brewery. So it's something to think about as we start looking at the data and wondering about its accuracy and precision. Here is Buffalo County, South Dakota. Uh, and on this one, it's just another example. It's a small county. It has under 2,000 people. It's very rural. It's along the Missouri River. It's mostly farmland. And so you can see under processing and distribution, for example, it's all zeros. In terms of the categories that we focused on, these are our categories. So we wanted to get, again, as much of a systems focus that we could. So we focused on access, assistance, health indicators, local and direct markets, the processing and distribution, and then the ag piece. So we can start to look in one place for what's happening in a county food system. The other thing that I will say, because we couldn't include absolutely everything, so we did make a balance between too many variables, but we also needed to have easily accessible data. So I know in our initial round of, well, what variables do we have in here? I think one was people wanted to see, for example, the number of CSA farms in a particular county, but it's was rather difficult to get that data. Certainly at a nationwide basis. I think it was that one, but there were others. You could probably think of other indicators that you might want, but it's often difficult to get those at that nationwide level. All right, this is a close-up example, again, of this. And I'll just focus in here. Let's see if I can grab the little arrow. I can't grab the little arrow. Well, if you look under food assistance and it says percent of students free lunch eligible 2009%, and this is the South Dakota, Buffalo County, and it's 0. Now, is that correct? Is it not? I certainly don't know because I'm not from there. But even if you are from there or in South Dakota, you can start thinking about these things. Is that true? Does it mean all the students go to a different county for school and so it's not reported in this one? So what is exactly happening? Same with these processing and distribution, right? What is exactly happening there? And we can see down here, 98.5% of the land is in farming, so really high percentage in that production area. Uh, questions to ask. Is everyone a farmer? Where do they go to access other foods, right? How far do they have to drive to a grocery store? So we can start to think about those sorts of things. The other thing that we did was, it's right here, regional maps by indicator. We thought it was important not just to see the data, but to see it spatially. So the other part of this portal is access to maps for each indicator, and 2 maps are available for each indicator. So this is one indicator and the 2 maps. So this is number of farms with direct sales per 10,000 people in 1997. And it shows how the data is, right, grouped. So the group is that there is 0 number of farms, is that white, and then it moves on up from there until you get to the red, which is a high number of farms. All right, so you can sort of see, if you were looking, oh, there's my county. All right, we can see neighboring counties. We can start to get some idea. We're looking at this one of maybe what patterns are coming out. We decided that we wanted to put in more of a analytical map, I guess. So we used the spatial hotspot analysis based on a specific kind of spatial statistic, this Geddes-Ord test. And what is that? So this map uses a specific type of spatial statistic. I said that. It tests for each county if adjacent counties are similar or not. So counties with high values surrounded by counties with high values are hotspots. So the red on the map are those hotspots. So let's see. this area right here is a hotspot. So we know the number of farms with direct sales per 10,000 people is quite high. Those with low values that are adjacent to other counties with low areas are the blue areas, and so those are the cold spots. So even though we may not be able to discern a pattern with kind of the raw data, this one up here, even though it gives us some valuable meaning, the hotspot analysis definitely starts to reveal some patterns. And one last note on this light color, that's sort of that light yellow, means there is no pattern. So a whole hot or cold spot is not evident there. This is another example of that. And this is, make sure, yes. So this is the same data as before, but 10 years later. And so we can start to compare maps over time as well. And we'd like to include, for example, this data once we get to the 2012 data as well. Right. Before
Karen
I
Lambert had
move
a question
on,
about clusters of counties.
oh yes?
Basically, is there a way to get data on clusters?
Oh, like if you wanted, these 3 counties and get all the indicators? I think if that's what you mean, no. That was our Cadillac version, and we did not quite get there. So you'd have to look at each of those 3 counties to grab the indicators and maybe plop them into an Excel spreadsheet or something. Uh, in terms of the maps, no, they come up like this. So you'd have to look at the entire region rather than just your state, for example. And Rosa, could we do the involvement in food systems polls? Can I bring that over? Yeah. So we just wanted to get some idea, and before I move forward, about how everyone is involved in food systems. So if you could pop in where you're at and what you're thinking about. All right. Ooh. All right. Well, it looks like a good broad distribution, all sorts of different things. Okay. Well, and certainly reflective in many ways of our food system, from ag production all the way down to youth and school gardens. So great. Um, and since we are in extension, lots of people in the organizational support. All right.
Anna, while we're waiting for those results to pop up, I just wanted to mention one question that came up in the chat box was about the functionality of the portal. And we have discovered that there are some browsers that don't support the pop-up windows that are in the portal. So you may try it. If it's not working for you, you might try it in a different browser, or just make sure your pop-up windows are enabled.
Right. Well, good. Thanks everyone for telling us how you're involved in food systems. Interesting. All right, to continue with the portal. Oh, one more. This is just one more example of the maps. All right, to continue with the portal, we have a discussion guide that is available Where is that discussion guide? Well, how to use the profile right there. Um, we have a discussion guide to download and a couple of samples. And in the discussion guide, we ask all sorts of things. So to get people thinking about what does all this data mean, kind of trying to get to that knowledge empty plate, having eaten the cake. So what does this say about all those aspects of the food system? What was surprising? What relationships did you see? I would myself want to see neighboring counties. So when you look at neighboring counties, are they similar or different? What's happening over time? Do you see any trends, etc.? So we do have a number of questions to help prompt people to start thinking about what's in the data. And Laura, feel free to pop in at any time and add comments. The other part of this is that we wanted to make sure everyone understood where the resources were coming from. And so we literally listed all sorts of resources. Actually, this is where you could get additional data, sorry, where you could get additional information on all of these different aspects of the food systems. So all sorts of resources are available there. This one, data definitions and sources, we wanted you to understand where we were getting our data. And if you want to go right to the source, you can do that. But we also have it so you can understand what that indicator means. So for each indicator, there is some explanation of what it is and how to think about it.
Anna, I do want to jump in and just say several people have asked about downloading the data, and we don't have the data set available on the portal for download. But as we mentioned, all of them are secondary data sources you can access at those additional sites, and they're all listed there by indicator.
And one big source is the USDA Ag Census. And the other two that Laura showed previously.
We have had a few more questions come in.
Yeah.
One about what would it take to do the Cadillac, and then another one about updating the data, and then a third one on sort of tracking the exports from a region, food exports.
Laura, do you have
Sure.
a sense of the Cadillac?
I think it will depend on how people are using the site and what sort of tools end up being the most useful. So in our initial discussions, we had a lot of suggestions about, additional mapping tools, and the regional mapping was one of those things people were really asking for. But we wanted to do this, this isn't really a soft launch, but the launch to kind of find out how people are using food systems information, what sort of programming you're doing to kind of inform that next step. So I think at this point we can't say exactly how much it would take to do the Cadillac version, but that's something we'll definitely explore if we see that the site is getting some usage and we're getting some good feedback on it. As far as the data updates go, actually some of the data that we took from the Food Atlas that I showed earlier has already been updated since we launched the portal. So so we know that that we'll need to go through and do that, at least that data update, and then include the new census data once that comes out as well. And I expect that we'll probably try to make that happen in the next few months.
And Bill Schuffstall, I see you asked what would it take to make this info nationwide, and it would actually be easy to do that because it's all there. So I think other regions could make a similar site, and I guess it's possible that this one could become nationwide. It's a matter of just downloading the information, I'd say. And Anamika, I don't know how you say that, but no. The short answer is no. We did not do any research on the cash receipts piece and commodity exchange. If you have a secondary source of information, of data that we can go to, maybe we could think about uploading something like that in the future.
I do want to mention one more thing on that question regarding commodities. In the data set, some people have noted too that we did not include a lot of information about sort of the non-traditional local food crops, and that's because in our original vision for it, it was more of a local food systems kind of tool. But we're realizing that people may want to do some comparisons, and because commodity agriculture is a big part of our food system, we may need to consider including some additional commodity indicators.
Right. Keep going with questions. I think we both like those.
Yeah, Heather Newkirk had one about additional indicators, farm to school, institutional work, how much of that is going on.
I can speak a little bit to that, Anna, if you'd like.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I know that there has been some tracking of food systems programs around the nation, particularly related to USDA grants that are now made available for those programs. We didn't include that here, but that's certainly something that we could consider including. And I saw that a number of you are working on sort of the processing distribution channels side. There quite honestly aren't a lot of secondary data sources on that information. So, as much as we have something that could be used as a metric for that, we'd consider including it. So your thoughts are appreciated.
And I think this raises a good point. You're coming up with, well, how about this indicator or that indicator? And I think at least the way that we have framed this right now is that this is to get people started in the conversation about what does our county food system look like. And we would hope that people would expand out from this to whatever is truly happening locally, and to really start digging much deeper into data.
One other piece of that, Anna, I'm sorry, I'm going to keep interrupting
No,
you,
go ahead.
is that what we've also found is that it can really help your community and maybe us at the state and regional level start to identify those gaps in our ability to measure impact of food systems work. So where we don't have data is actually an important point of inquiry. So that's certainly something to keep in mind too.
I'm sorry, I keep going back and forth between these two slides. But this is the end of what this portal looks like. It's a very, I think, pretty simple website. There's just a few places to go. It's as direct as we could make it, tried to make it as simple to use as possible. And we would love to hear your feedback on how you've used it, uh, what more data you would like to see on it, just like the conversation we're having here.
Yeah, this is great. Abby Gold had a question about the analysis of hotspot, cold spot, and I believe I can answer for you on that, you look for clusters of counties and not really with regard to state line. So some of the clusters can cross state lines, so you did it for the whole region.
Right, this was done on the whole region. And if you look up hotspot analysis in Google or whatever search engine, things will come up and it'll give you probably much more technical detail than you want on that particular spatial statistic and how it's how you get it. All right. This slide for us is thinking about the intersection of various parts of the food system. So again, it's just for me prompts about how to start thinking about how various parts of this portal may connect together and how we can think through questions, whether we have the indicators available in the food portal or maybe we have to go to other data. Laura, do you want to add anything on this one?
No, these are questions that I used in another presentation where we referenced the data from the portal, and I'd say, you know, what we're learning about how we use the portal is that it may be easier to start with a discussion of two different indicators, like say agricultural production and public health issues. If it seems overwhelming to think about what are the connections broadly in the food system, to sort of pick two and then dive into these types of questions for each of those areas. So this is one example.
And it hasn't been up very long, but we are already getting comments from people. So here's what we have so far. Advice, I guess, about using this. One is if you're going to use this data, so you've downloaded a county or several counties, to review the data before sharing it with partners. We had someone who did not do that, and they were questioning the data itself. And you know, we don't really want the data itself to be questioned, but like with the brewery, yes, there is only one brewery in Dane County, but there's plenty of brew pubs and they serve food as a restaurant, but they also happen to make beer. So it's really important to understand, I guess, how the data is defined and what the source is, so you can make sure that people who you're sharing the data with know what it is and why there could be questions about what the indicator says. Also, as Laura said before, you know, to just start, you know, simple, I guess. So just picking two specific indicators, or two, you know, one maybe broad area, for example, food access, to start getting people talking about these things. I think when it's been introduced, here's all the data, it gets really overwhelming, especially if you had all the maps in addition, because that would be another, I don't know, 20 maps or something. It could get a bit overwhelming. So just to think through, you know, what is really important for the group that you're talking with. Laura, anything else? Oh,
She's lost her connection again.
sorry.
I'll try to get her back.
Yeah, she'll
Okay,
come
she's
back.
back. Yeah. Okay.
Actually, Laura, do you have any other comments on this one? I don't know when you popped out, so.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's I think you went through this in enough detail. I guess what I just wanted to say regarding that last one too is that if you're able to have that kind of discussion where you have, you know, people from various aspects of the food system at a table together, to be conscious about sort of the shared language, and that, you know, someone who's in ag production may not have had a discussion about public health issues before, and this is really, I think it's a good conversation starter. It was not easy when the example I gave was this presentation that I used the data for last week, and I was working with another state specialist in family living programs, and it was not easy for us to start making those connections between various aspects of the food system, because we live in, our world where we're looking at things from a very sort of program-specific perspective. So I guess, the discussion guide was really our attempt to start that conversation.
Right. Good points. All right. Limitations and next steps for us. Because we want this available to a broad region and perhaps the nation at some point, we're limited to secondary data and the availability of that. By its nature, it's not comprehensive. We cannot find data on this particular area, intermediated sales. We're trying to figure out if there are other ways that we can display the data. So aside from a map and the hotspot analysis, are there other interesting ways that would help people if we could, create interesting infographics? I think anytime we're talking about local food, the biggest challenge is defining what that is. And I think, at least for the work that I'm doing in Wisconsin, it seems like it needs to be locally defined. Some places may have the state as their local area, others might just have their county. So, but that is a challenge. And yes, local wisdom and always more research. And I think what we're curious about is the evaluation aspect of this. Are we having an impact over time, and what is actually changing? So those are things we will be thinking about as we move forward, and certainly on the limitations. With that, we are about done. We would be interested to know how you might use this tool and how it could be more useful. And a evaluation too was just popped up. We would love to hear out of this presentation.
Yeah, thanks a lot to both of you for doing this. It's a nice overview of what's in the tool and how to use it. I would encourage all of you on the line to fill out the evaluation, but also put any suggestions for future development into the chat box, because I think this group is very active and ready to take on different things, new ideas. So this is kind of in its infancy, and but still a very good resource as it stands. Go back to, I think it was Anamika. Oh, it was Heather. Just talked about this USDA farm to school census, and that might be a really good addition to a future version of this, and that's a great suggestion. And these chat suggestions are going to go back to the presenters in an email later today, so they'll get everything you say word for word.
Oh, great.
And Rick had a good suggestion about maybe on the entry description there to mention the connection with extension.
Oh, right on our front page? All right, yeah, we should have that. I'm pretty sure it says that we were funded at least by NCRCRD.
Actually, the entry page doesn't say that, and it doesn't mention extension either, so
Oh,
both
okay.
of those would be good.
Yes.
That's a great suggestion. Thank you.
It's one of those things when you're working so closely on something, like the most obvious thing gets forgotten somehow.
I think at one point, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think at one point we did have a number of logos cluttering the front page, and we decided it would be easier just to take them off and put them somewhere else. But it would be good for people to know where the resource is coming from.
Yes. And I see there is a quote. When do you intend to update based on Ag Census 2012? That is a good question. And I'm not sure all of the data has rolled out entirely, so we want to make sure all the data is out before we start to update it based on the Ag Census. So that would be one thing. But I think it could happen in a reasonable period of time once all the data is available.
Come to the end of our.
I know.
Oh, there's one from Tim.
I know,
Okay.
and I see one from Walt.
Sharing a food policy.
Right. Well, first on Walt Whitmer, who would be best to follow up? I think, Laura, well, I don't know. On the content side, maybe Laura would be the best, but it would be the Applied Pop Lab that helped us with the technology aspect of it. So they would be the ones to help with that.
I just wanted to post our names and titles here so you can see where we're from if you'd like to get in touch with us after the presentation. I want to thank everyone for participating, and feel free to keep posting your questions if you'd like to.
Redmond had one about